I say. Pip, old chap, cried Joe, opening his blue eyes wide. What a scholar you are, aren't you? I should like to be, said I, glancing at the slate as he held it, with a misgiving that the writing was rather hilly. Why, here's AJ, said Joe, and AO equal to anything. Here's AJ and AO, Pip, and AJO. Joe. I had never heard Joe read aloud to any greater extent than this monosyllable, and I had observed at church last Sunday when I accidentally held our prayer book upside down, that it seemed to suit his convenience quite as well as if it had been all right. Wishing to embrace the present occasion of finding out whether in teaching Joe I should have to begin quite at the beginning, I said. Ah, but read the rest, Joe. The rest, Pip, said Joe, looking at it with a slowly searching eye. 1, 2, 3. Why, here's 3 J's, and 3 O's, and 3 J-O, Joe's in it, Pip. I leaned over Joe, and, with the aid of my forefinger, read him the whole letter. Astonishing, said Joe, when I had finished. You are a scholar. How do you spell Gargery, Joe? I asked him, with a modest patronage. I don't spell it at all, said Joe. But supposing you did? It can't be supposed, said Joe. Though I'm uncommon fond of reading too. Are you, Joe? Uncommon. Give me, said Joe, a good book, or a good newspaper, and sit me down afore a good fire, and I ask no better. Lord, he continued, after rubbing his knees a little, when you do come to AJ and AO, and says you, here, at last, is AJO, Joe, how interesting reading is. I derived from this last, that Joe's education, like steam, was yet in its infancy. Pursuing the subject, I inquired, didn't you ever go to school, Joe, when you were as little as me? No. Pip, why didn't you ever go to school, Joe, when you were as little as me? Well, Pip, said Joe, taking up the poker, and settling himself to his usual occupation when he was thoughtful of slowly raking the fire between the lower bars, I'll tell you. My father, Pip, he were given to drink, and when he were overtook with drink, he hammered away at my mother, most unmerciful. It were a'most the only hammering he did, indeed, excepting at myself. And he hammered at me with a wigger only to be equalled by the wigger with which he didn't hammer at his anvil. You're a listening and understanding, Pip? Yes, Joe. Consequence, my mother and me we ran away from my father, several times, and then my mother she'd go out to work, and she'd say, Joe, she'd say, now, please God, you shall have some schooling, child, and she'd put me to school. But my father were that good in his heart that he couldn't a-bear to be without us. So, he'd come with a most tremendous crowd and make such a row at the doors of the houses where we was, that they used to be obligated to have no more to do with us and to give us up to him. And then he took us home and hammered us. Which, you see, Pip, said Joe, pausing in his meditative raking of the fire, and looking at me, were a drawback on my learning. Certainly. Poor Joe. Though mind you, Pip, said Joe, with a judicial touch or two of the poker on the top bar, rendering unto all their due, and maintaining equal justice betwixt man and man. My father were that good in his heart, don't you see? I didn't see, but I didn't say so. Well, Joe pursued, somebody must keep the pot a-biling, Pip, or the pot won't bile. Don't you know? I saw that, and said so. Consequence, my father didn't make objections to my going to work, so I went to work at my present calling, which were his too. If he would have followed it, and I worked tolerable hard, I assure you, Pip, in time I were able to keep him, and I kept him till he went off in a purple-leptic fit. And it were my intentions to have had put upon his tombstone that whatsoever the failings on his part. Remember, reader, he were that good in his heart. Joe recited this couplet with such manifest pride and careful perspicuity, that I asked him if he had made it himself. I made it, said Joe. My own self. I made it in a moment. It was like striking out a horseshoe complete, in a single blow. I never was so much surprised in all my life. Couldn't credit my own head, to tell you the truth. Hardly believed it were my own head. As I was saying, Pip, it were my intentions to have had it cut over him. But poetry costs money, cut it how you will, small or large, and it were not done. Not to mention bearers, all the money that could be spared were wanted for my mother. She were in poor health, and quite broke. She weren't long of following, poor soul. And her share of peace come round at last.